everyone, it's Angie. Welcome back to my channel, Literary Labors. Today I'm doing bookshelf tour number 1. I am going to share my nonfiction bookcase. Now, this is where I store the majority of my nonfiction books, but I do have some scattered on a couple of other bookcases. It just depends on my organizational system. But this is the majority of my nonfiction books. And this is a bookshelf, a bookcase that I had in my classroom. It's one that I bought off of my sister-in-law. I took it to my classroom. It was there for a couple of years, and then I realized at the end of this school year, well, no, not the end of the school year, because school ended up being closed during spring break. So it was a little before that. I realized it was basically just a storage space for junk, and I figured it could be put to better use here at home. And I'm glad I brought it because my bookshelves, my bookcases, the two that I originally had, were overflowing. So yeah, this is a lot better. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm not going to say too much about most of the books. If I have something to say, I'll go ahead and share some information, but otherwise, to keep this as short and sweet as possible, I'm just going to go ahead and pull out a book and show it to you. Preparation for Death, Considerations on Eternal Truth by St. Alphonsus Liguori, and I have no idea why I have this book. I think somebody that I follow, I think he may be Catholic, either on Instagram or Twitter, mentioned this. Robert McFarlane, Landmarks, and this is a book that I bought for, what was it, Springathon, and I never did get to it. Twain's Feast by Andrew Beers. Understand Your True Measure by Lisa Bevere. This is Christian nonfiction, self-help. Novel Destinations, a travel guide to literary landmarks from Jane Austen's Bath to Ernest Hemingway's Key West by Shannon McKenna Schmidt and Joni Rendon. This is the second edition. Any of the books in this series or in these series came from a few road trips that I've taken. These are souvenirs that I do plan to read. This one is Images of America, Natchez, Landmarks, Lifestyles, and Leisure. Surprised by Joy, C.S. Lewis. The Elements of Style by William Strunk. This is a book that I've wanted to read for a long time, but I recently purchased it, and I don't think I bought the right edition because I really thought it was going to be a much thicker book. So You've Been Publicly Shamed by John Ronson. This is a book that I bought for a readathon that was created and hosted by A.G. McDonald. I think it was called... No, it wasn't Cancel-a-thon. I don't remember the title of, or the name of the readathon, but I bought it for A.G. McDonald's readathon that he hosted in January. I never did read it, though. The Teacher Wars, A History of America's Most Embattled Profession by Dana Goldstein. Confederate Jasmine and the Fat Tuesday Tree, A Poetic Herbarium by Anne Lewis. This is a book that I plan to reread in December, I think. This is a withdrawn library book that my sister got for me from her library. It is Carl Sandburg by Richard Crowder, I believe. Elegant Nightmares, The English Ghost Story from Le Fanu to Blackwood by Jack Sullivan. I heard about this author and this book in particular when I used to listen to a podcast called, I think, The Great Books, and I bought this book and another one of Jack Sullivan's. The Butchering Art by Lindsay Fitzharris. The Professor and the Madman by Simon Winchester. Democracy in America by Alexis de Tocqueville. This edition is translated by George Lawrence. American Canopy by Eric Rutkow. How to Read Literature Like a Professor by Thomas C. Foster. Bradbury Speaks, Too Soon from the Cave, Too Far from the Stars. And this one, if I look at the date on the half price sticker, I purchased back in 2008. and I've not read it yet. The Devil's Backbone, The Story of the Natchez Trace by Jonathan Daniels. I bought this one when my sister and I took a tiny road trip to Natchez and Vicksburg, Mississippi, and we drove along the Natchez Trace Parkway. The Valley of Vision, a collection of Puritan prayers and devotions. I don't remember where I heard about this book. I want to say maybe it was from Denise Hildreth Jones, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I haven't read the entire thing, but I've read a few of the prayers. Books in My Baggage by Lawrence Clark Powell. I heard about this author from Emma over at The Bookish Princess. I have another book by Lawrence Clark Powell, but that one is in my nonfiction already read bookshelf. Book Girl by Sarah Clarkson. Riding the Rails, Teenagers on the Move During the Great Depression by Errol Lincoln. I don't know how to say that last name. I heard about this book when I was watching a documentary, a news report on teenage hobos during the Great Depression, I think. I don't know, is hobo a politically incorrect term to use? I'm sorry if it is. I really am. I don't know if it's a derogatory term. And finally, on this top shelf, When Character Was King, A Story of Ronald Reagan by Peggy Noonan. I purchased this last summer when I visited Ronald Reagan's boyhood home in Dixon, Illinois. It's got the little Ronald Reagan boyhood home sticker up there. This is the second shelf on the same bookcase. Solving the Mystery of the Lost Colony, Roanoke by Lee Miller. Images of America, Vicksburg National Military Park by Terrence J. Winchell. The Natchez Trace, A Pictorial History, Revised and Updated by James A. Crutchfield. Again, this one is a book that I bought when I was in Natchez, along with Vicksburg National Military Park. I bought that one in Vicksburg. John Stuart Mill on Liberty and the Subjection of Women. Racecraft, The Soul of Inequality in American Life by Karen E. Fields and Barbara J. Fields. I just heard about this one recently, and this one might be my most recent nonfiction purchase, I think. These next two books are books that were actually loaned to me by a friend. This one is Martin Luther Had a Wife, Harriet Beecher Stowe Had a Husband. I should probably read this one soon because I've had it probably for 2 years now. This is another one that is on loan from a friend. This one's Stepping Heavenward by Elizabeth Prentice. Death on a Friday Afternoon by Richard John Newhouse. Meditations on the Last Words of Jesus from the Cross. A Woman After God's Own Heart by Elizabeth George. This is another Christian nonfiction. Following the Equator, A Journey Around the World by Mark Twain, and that half-price sticker has the year 2003 on it, so yeah, another book I've had on my shelf for a really long time. The Path of Loneliness by Elizabeth Elliot. Books by Larry McMurtry. This is a book I've already read, but I purchased it about a year ago, intending to reread it sometime. How to Read and Why by Harold Bloom. And I'm pretty sure I bought this one ages ago at a Books A Million, maybe? Experiencing God, Knowing and Doing the Will of God by Henry and Richard Blackaby. The Self-Confident Woman, Building a Strong Foundation for Healthy Relationships by Janet Congo. Spinsters Abroad, Victorian Lady Explorers by Dee Burkett. This is a really special book to me. I bought this when my two sisters and I went on a road trip to Durango, Colorado. We weren't abroad. We were in the States. Yeah, and I found this one at a used bookstore in Durango. And so, yeah, it's a little bit special because even though my oldest sister is not a spinster, my younger sister and I, she probably doesn't like to be called a spinster, but I mean, we're probably going to be spinsters. At least that's what the road looks like. Cultural Literacy, What Every American Needs to Know by E.D. Hirsch Jr. Reading Magic by Mem Fox. Mem Fox is an incredible children's book author. If you've not read anything by her, I highly recommend Wilfred Gordon MacDonald Partridge, Possum Magic. Oh, there's another one that I really like. It's one about a pirate, but I don't remember his name. The Land of Little Rain by Mary Austin. This is a book that I did try to read for Springathon, I think, and I didn't finish it. The Pursuit of God by A.W. Tozer. The Pioneers by David McCullough. Henry Clay, The Essential American by David S. Heidler and Jeannie T. Heidler. I bought this one at a library book sale for like 10 cents. It had really excellent ratings on Goodreads, so I figured I should go ahead and buy it then. Washington's Crossing, David Hackett Fisher. Jane Austen's Guide to Dating by Lauren Henderson. I was going to read this last year for Jane Austen July, and it's another book that I just never got to. Lunch in Paris, a love story with recipes by Elizabeth Bard. Wanderlust, a history of walking by Rebecca Solnit. No Beast So Fierce, the terrifying true story of the Champawat tiger, the deadliest animal in history, by Dane Huckleridge. George Washington's Secret Six, the spy ring that saved the American Revolution, by Brian Kilmeade. And I have no idea how this book came into my possession. The Secret Library, a book lover's journey through curiosities of history by Oliver Turrell. This is a book that I had on my Amazon wishlist, and Tia from Tia and All the Books so generously bought it for me for my birthday. Don't Waste Your Life by John Piper. This is a book that I probably should have read years ago, and I haven't. This is the third and final shelf on this bookcase. This one was a gift from my brother, Before They Changed the World by Edwin Keister Jr. The History of the Hudson River Valley, From Wilderness to the Civil War by Vernon Benjamin. This is another book that I found for 10 cents at that library book sale. The Silk Roads, A New History of the World by Peter Frankopan. 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos by Jordan B. Peterson. This is another book that I bought for A.G. McDonald's Readathon. Again, I want to say cancel-a-thon, but I'm not completely sure. Coolidge by Amity Shlaes. This is another book that I purchased at that library book sale for 10 cents. I really want to read up on Calvin Coolidge, and this is a book that has really good reviews and ratings on Goodreads. Battle Hymn of the Tiger Teachers, The Michaela Way, edited by Catherine Burble Singh. A Little History of Literature by John Sutherland. This is another book that I had on my Amazon wish list, and which also was purchased for me by Tia. Reading the Rocks by Brenda Maddox. How Victorian Geologists Discovered the Secret of Life. Raising the Curve, A Year Inside One of America's 45,000 Failing Public Schools by Ron Burler. This is a book that was gifted to me by my brother. The Road to Little Dribbling, Adventures of an American in Britain by Bill Bryson. Founding Brothers, The Revolutionary Generation by Joseph J. Ellis. I think this one was given to me by my brother-in-law. The Places That Scare You, A Guide to Fearlessness in Difficult Time by Pema Chodron. Creators, Conquerors, and Citizens, A History of Ancient Greece by Robin Waterfield. This is a book that I bought to read for my reading project, Reading My Way Through History, and I've not read it yet. I'm hoping to read it in November for Nonfiction November. The Rise of the Greeks by Michael Grant. This is a book that came highly recommended on Goodreads. Again, it's a book that it's a book that I bought for my Reading My Way Through History project. Patriot Sage, George Washington and the American Political Tradition by Gary L. Gregg II and Matthew Spalding. I always butcher this name. I thought I had it memorized at one point. Nagadich? Is that how you say that? This is another book in the Images of America series, and I purchased it in Nagadich, Louisiana. This one's a big one. Strangers in a New Land, What Archaeology Reveals About the First Americans by J.M. Aduvasio and David Pedler. This is another one that I bought for my Reading My Way Through History project. I actually read several books about ancient man, and this was just another one that I bought in case I wanted to read some more on that period in history. But I never got around to reading this one. I'll get to it eventually. Bones for Barnum Brown, Adventures of a Dinosaur Hunter by Roland T. Bird. This is one that I think I bought at the Mammoth site here in Waco, Texas. The last one on this last shelf is also a big one, Around the World in 80 Wonders by Carla Serra and Sylvia Bombelli. This is a book that was gifted to me by my brother. Hey, that was it for my nonfiction bookshelf bookcase tour. Like I said, I have nonfiction on other shelves, but I'll get to those whenever I do another bookshelf tour. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If there was anything that looked interesting to you that you think you may want to read with me, let me know, because yeah, I've had some of these books on my shelves clearly for ages, and I've not read most of them. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I will talk to you later.